Call a special meeting for the corporation of the town of Cobalt to order on May 2nd, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Adoption of meeting agenda, draft motion. Be it resolved, the council approve the agenda of the special meeting dated May 2nd, 2024 as presented. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Cooper and Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Carried. Business. 4.1, presentation and review of the 2024 capital budget.
Your worship, may I sit in to address council? Good evening, council. What I will be doing first is presenting the draft of the 2024 capital budget. Just before we begin there, I do want to say that had input from all departments. We went through this thoroughly. Once we saw the numbers, we again went back to all departments. So this was a very thorough line by line process. So if we will start with the capital projects for 2024 are the cemetery columbarium, and that is going to be $25,000. Get it up on the screen here. Next, we have the heritage preservation, and that is provided through gas tax. And that would be for the removal of the marquee that was safety hazard, so that was completely removed. Also, we're looking at a scaled down version of the marquee, and also with the head frame, we deferral for it for the time being. The new garage, still we're doing payments on that, so that's estimated at $20,000. But that $20,000 comes out of municipal taxes, so we got to keep that in mind. Next is we are looking at for fleet a pickup truck. A recommendation here was a 2018 Ford F550 to replace. We have an aging 2010 F-150 right now, which needs to come off the road as soon as possible. So this would replace it, but also it's a multi-tool. So with the 550, it would also have on the back of it like an aluminum. You could put sander, or you can put water, and if at the front, put a plow if required. So it's a multi-use, multi-vehicle for that. For the sewer department, through OSIF funding, it's the director's orders, the assimilative capacity study, flow meter, and ECA. Next would be the consolidated linear infrastructure project, again with OSIF funding, and that's for $12,000. And an upgrade to the wetlands isolation valves project. Actually, that one has been completed. And the costs here are again is all from OSIF funding. Next, under the water department, water plant filters, distribution valves, service line projects. So that's ongoing through this year. That's going through a gas tax. Continuation of the roads for the traffic road roadway here, and that will be on commission going to Cobalt Street. And then our planning department, that was the final steps for the official plan. And then for our parks, it's the tech park, landscaping around the walking path is also involved. Meaning for that. And finally, the fire truck is on here this time, but the capital expenses or revenues comes out to $1,194,563.70. But with the municipal taxes in there, we're looking at $1,214,563.70. Any questions before we go to the operating? One thing before speaking about the operating is I'd like to just discuss, we had the ministry here not long. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Question going back to the head frame legs.
Yep.
Are they in a suitable condition to remain standing? They have been rotting, they have been falling. So are the jack legs?
I'm going on that right now. Just waiting to see, talking with Don Decker about it as well as engineers, reviewing it right now and seeing what's required. So if we require the funding for that, we will be going again to the heritage of gas tax. So that's an ongoing one. There are no new capital projects starting. This is all ongoing.
And I'd just like to point out so that the public's aware that the landscaping that you're talking about around the walking trail, that was funded last year. And this is fund money that's sitting there to be used for that purpose. So it's not costing the ratepayers anything.
Before I go into the operating, the ministry was in here about a month ago, discussing about how our reserves were. They mentioned it being at about 28,000. That isn't quite correct because there was also our water and surplus, water and sewer surplus. That was not in that number. So I just wanted to kind of ease a little bit at that, but we cannot budget for a deficit. We've been doing it for too long and we cannot continue that. Our auditor has also indicated that as well. So I know from our recommendations from 2023 was having a municipal service delivery review, level of service to bylaw, investigate options, possibly Sharp Lake, and review all vacant towns, lots, declare surplus, and sell. So before going to any further though, we want to look at again that 2023 recommendation for 2024 and look at some other possibilities with our 18 Silver Street right beside us, that office, see what can happen with that. So one thing is also our tax increase needs to keep up with the cost of inflation. So we got to remember the CPI as well.
Steve? Yeah. Before we go any further, do you have the number on that reserves?
Not offhand, maybe from the 2020 at the end of, because it's still a draft, 2023. Yeah. So here, that number is approximately $273,839.
Okay, thank you.
When you say we have to keep up with the cost of inflation, you mean no matter what, we have to at least increase by the cost of inflation?
Yes.
So that we're not drawing from reserves too much.
And in the operating budget here, you'll notice we are being proactive by putting $10,000 in for against the deficit. So we need to be proactive with this to continue on. So I'll begin now with the operating. Also, our municipal assessments from MPAC are still frozen at the 2016 valuation, so we got to remember that. Also, with our costs, outside service partners have increased from 2 to 33%. Our highest operating costs coming in will be our landfill, transit, and insurance, and we have no control with that. So I just want to keep that in mind. So if council wants to go through this as the go to the general government revenue. So our estimates here currently would be based off the, without any increases, our revenues would be sitting at $3,069,675. Just want to keep that. And the general government there would be at the $1,993,974.
That's without any increases.
Yes. Now, if you look at our general government expenses, we budgeted about 617,506. Transportation, 755,651. Going back to that general government, that's including a reduction of deficit with an additional $10,000 in that amount. Health and social, we are looking at 255,323, and within that also DSAP. Again, we have no control on those expenses. Recreation and culture expenses in there. And we have a breakdown, and that's going to any grants in there. Within there is the we put in for the library operating grant, 12,500. Right after that is our planning and development, and for expenses with that is our asset management, which we are required to have ready for July 1st of this year. This is our protection to persons and property. Budget 641,459 there. That's for all connected with the fire department, as well as OPP costs. OPP costs have went up considerably, approximately 391,459.51 up to 412,379. Again, costs that we do not control. Also in these costs are payments for the fire truck. Finally, for environmental in there, this would be everything water and sewers, as well as our recycling and landfill. Landfill went up over around approximately $25,000. In costs we cannot control. Insurance went up as well, approximately 11%. So, reality, a 1% tax increase is approximately $7,138. A 1.5 tax rate increase is about $10,707. So right now, for 2024, our revenue estimates run at $3,069,675. Our expenses run at $3,177,915. So we have a shortfall of $108,240. So at this time, we are looking increasing taxes Property assessment of $120,000 will see a tax increase of approximately $277 for the year, or $23.08 monthly. And that is to break even. And that would be a 13.5% increase. No, it's not the same one. But that is what we are looking at, is a 13.5% increase to taxes for this year. But again, remember, this is not going into any reserves. And that's what we need to do, as stated by the ministry. We have to take that upon us. Just overlooking over the years, we were not keeping up with the CPI and inflation. So it finally came to a head.
I'd just like to remind everybody that the ministry cautioned us we're one disaster away from not being able to meet our financial needs. One disaster away from being able to meet our financial needs. In other words, we don't have enough to cover if something happens in an emergency in the town.
Also, Infrastructure Ontario won't even look at us if we don't have a balanced budget. If they see us going for a deficit, off the table.
And when you say this is our expenses, so when there's another water main break, that's not even part of this, or have we budgeted for?
We have budgeted
for a couple water main breaks. Okay.
Definitely. Err on the side of caution.
I think one factor that the public probably isn't aware of is that when the census was done during COVID, the results from the census was that our population dropped. Now, I know, being a census taker, we could not get into all the apartment buildings to get to each person. So our population didn't drop that dramatically, but the number did, and that number is what the government uses when they factor in how much they're going to give us on capital projects and stuff like that. So then we're getting less money from the government because it looks like we have fewer people. We've still got the same number of people to look after too, plus increased expenses from everywhere else. So that was another factor that I believe has really hit us that way.
The budget committee, as well as staff, all staff, again, looked at everything, went back, returned with more cuts, went back, came back with even further cuts. This was actually the most in-depth I've seen onto a budget. Is this one here, cutting as much as possible.
Does this have the Firefall Museum tear down on this one, or is that already on last year's?
That is on here because it will be in 2024. So that's also another expense that is not covered by any funder.
I think that's in there at 60,000.
Yeah, it's in there at 60.
Is that under operating, or is that under capital?
Operating.
Yeah.
So one thing I recommend for council for 2024, get the municipal service delivery review. That is essential at this point.
That's going to be happening hopefully sometime later in May. I'm just waiting to hear about a date for that, and it'll be a special meeting so that our focus is just on the service level bylaw.
And the key ones, again, and repeating myself, I know here, transit services has gone up approximately over 20,000 in the last 2 years. We're looking at landfill sites that went up 25,000 as well. All that gets put on to taxpayers. as well as insurance. It went up 13% last year. It's gone up 11% this year.
And I'd just like to remind everybody, like, as counselors, we're also residents in town. So whatever increase is being struck tonight, we're also going to be feeling it as well. But if we want to be a sustainable town and still be a town in 10 years, we got to start taking our finances seriously and making sure that we're responsible with it. I know we've done some very low increases in the past, and I was a guilty counselor that voted and argued for a low tax increase. And unfortunately, now we're going to pay or feel the pinch for that. Does anybody have anything, any other questions for Steve? Or?
I was just gonna say that level of services bylaw has to be dealt with as quick as possible, like you've already said. And we're gonna have to see what cutbacks we can get there. You know, and pass them back to the taxpayer if we can make big cutbacks or any type of cutback.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to move forward with the 13.5%.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we do have to also look at municipally owned property and what we're leasing it for, and at least cover our costs when we're leasing our properties.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. I do want to thank all individuals, budget committee and all staff for their hard work on this. This has been going on, looking at numbers actually since middle of last year until now.
I'd like to second the thanks of the budget. Everybody that worked on the budget. I sat in on a couple of meetings and I know how stressful it was going over everything and trying to come up with out of the box thinking to see where we could save where we could. And I know there was a lot of ideas shot across the table. So again, thank you. I know it wasn't an easy process at all. Okay, so I have 2 resolutions or 2 motions. So, yeah, bear with me just a minute. I have be it resolved at the special meeting of May 2nd, 2024, Council reviewed the 2024 capital budget summary as presented. And whereas after discussion, Council approves the 2024 capital budget in the amount of $1,214,563.70. And further, that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaws. And I'm going to call for a recorded vote. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Cooper. 4. Councillor Hughes.
4.
Councillor Hunter.
4.
Councillor Starchuk.
4.
Councillor Wilcox.
4.
And Mayor Adsett 4. So 7-4-0 opposed. The second one has to do with our our operational budget. That's right. Be it resolved that at the special meeting of May 2nd, 2024, Council reviewed the 2024 operational budget summary as presented. And whereas after discussion, Council approved the 2024 operational budget in the amount of $3,177,915. And whereas the total 2024 operational and capital budget of $4,372,479 which is a 13.5% increase to tax levy. And further, that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaws. And again, I'll do a recorded vote. Councillor Anderson?
For.
Councillor Cooper? Councillor Hughes?
For.
Councillor Hunter?
For.
Councillor Starchuk?
For.
Councillor Wilcox?
4.
And Mayor Adsett, 4. 7-4, 0 opposed. Carried. 5, adjournment. Draft motion, be it resolved that the special meeting of council be adjourned at oh, sorry, I need to back up. It's my first budget at this seat. I need a mover and a seconder for both of those. Councillor Cooper and Councillor Anderson. Does the vote still count? And I need a mover and a seconder for the second. Councillor Hunter, Councillor Starchuk. I apologize for that. No, I still came up. 5, adjournment. Draft motion, be it resolved that the special meeting of council be adjourned at 6:55 p.m. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Cooper, Councillor Hughes, all in favor? Carried.